Hello, you're listening to the Neil Lamptey Show. My name's Joey, and I'm joined by Paul.
All right, mate.
And by Neil.
Hello.
It's a Lamptey set menu tonight. We've got a main course of Chesterfield chat with Neil, a Port Vale pudding preview, and to start, some moments of the week. Paul, do you want to kick us off?
Yeah, I find it really interesting. O'Brien's obviously been dropped for making 2 game-changing howlers, and I was really interested in the response that sort of people gave towards McNulty, or at least the way that the manager responded to McNulty. And I know this is going to be a really existential point, but I'm good at these. Against Yeovil, I had a look at the post-match interview, and Mark Robins basically went, he should have stayed at home. He sort of singled out O'Brien for the mistake for their opening goal, which is fair enough. You know, shit happens. But with McNulty, after McNulty's miss, it was very much he's still going to be the top goal scorer in League Two. I've got complete faith in McNulty. So I've run a little poll to see if people think that a missed chance, and I'm sorry everyone's seen McNulty's missed chance, is the same as a goalkeeping howler. And really surprisingly, like 60% of people believe that McNulty's miss is equivalent to the O'Brien goalkeeping howlers. I find it really strange, but does that mean that, you know, is McNulty under pressure? Should he be dropped for Saturday for missing the chance? You know, if the same thing happened to O'Brien, where do we go from here?
The difference, perhaps, is that McNulty hasn't got a Lee Burge equivalent waiting in the wings to take over, has he, I suppose?
Well, does he not? I mean, we've talked about this. We have 7 strikers on the books. We have Kwame Thomas, who's not even in the matchday squad. John and Ponticelli, I'm sure will be discussed at some point when we get to listeners' questions.
But Burge
you've got,
is arguably...
Duck and New Tony, who aren't on the pitch when the Duck comes on. He's going on the right wing. So, but I think there are other options.
But Burge was the de facto first choice at the start of the season and lost his place only through being injured. And O'Brien kept his place because he'd had them good games. And we'd said you wouldn't drop him on the strength of one mistake, and then he made another pretty catastrophic mistake. I'm not saying that then you go, oh, you definitely drop him, but it's, you know, Burge is kind of, I'm guessing, sat behind Robins on the bench going, you didn't remember I was first choice. There's probably a reason for it. So you don't know. I think it's difficult, but McNulty, we've talked about our sort of striking options. I'm not sure Bevan and McNulty would be my first choice pairing more later. But I don't think that just the miss would make me say, let's drop him.
I don't think there's an equivalency there. Personally, I can't say. It's how you frame it, isn't it? And I certainly don't think you can frame those mistakes, or specific mistakes that O'Brien made, with McNulty's not scoring a goal. The first, the one when he was through on goal and he kind of side-footed it, and there's a lot of margin for error there. He didn't quite get it inside the post. That's certainly not the one that we were talking about, is it? And then obviously you got the one where he's falling backwards trying to head it in. I'm not sure. He should have scored if he claims to be a striker, but at the same time, I just can't. I can't see how you can put that to the same as those mistakes of O'Brien.
Just for some context, I think. Can I just talk about the header for a second? I know that we're kind of getting a little bit ahead of ourselves. If you've watched the highlights on iFollow, it's frustrating that it picks it up from the angle that it does because it's not particularly helpful. But we were right behind it, and actually, the angle gives you a quite kind view of how good a chance it was. It actually, from being right behind it, it was unfathomable that he managed to put it as far wide as he did. But that said, I guess your point still stands about the comparison. Sorry, Paul.
But no, I mean, the only comparison is obviously, if you want to be overly clinical about it, is you could say that O'Brien cost us a point or 2 points or however many points in the 2 games. You could say that in a way, if McNulty scores, then we win. We get 3 points. He didn't score, and we get 1. I mean, I always find it very strange that strikers definitely get a lot more leeway than goalkeepers when they make mistakes. But that we already know that. That's one of those truisms of football. Is if you're a goalkeeper, you make one mistake, and it results in a goal. You're hammered. If a striker, you make one mistake and you miss a decent chance. You're allowed more chances. I suppose one of the things I found really interesting was I was surprised that Mark Robins didn't come out and go, well, yeah, McNulty missed the chances, but we need goals from everywhere. But it was very much a case of, no, McNulty will score. And you're like, but we do need goals from everywhere. We need, it's like, you know, it's interesting that no one goes, well, like Bevan, did Bevan miss any chances on Saturday? That's the other question, is just fair play to McNulty if he's creating the chances to miss. There are strikers in that squad who don't seem to be doing even that.
More on this very soon, I'm sure. But Neil, your moment of the week.
My moment of the week happened today. So, unrequited friend of the pod, Carl Baker, joined other unrequited friend of the pod, Connor Thomas, in India. He's gone there. So, yeah, that everybody can stop worrying about him coming back now, because he's decided that he doesn't want to come to Coventry.
No. Yeah, at the moment, that's the key word, Neil. The season for India finishes in March.
Well, there we go. Let me finish my sentence, Paul.
In March. The countdown's going to begin again.
Well, I'm happy that it's over for the time being, at least. Is it March? I thought it was even earlier than that. Didn't we pick up Peter Ramage, like in January or something like that?
I think it's a different season now. I had a look on, because Stuart Court on Twitter made exactly the same point about, we can no longer get the Carl Baker stuff. So I looked to see when it would start again, and it will start again because in March their season will end. So he could still return.
He will return.
March,
He's not going to stay out there. Yeah, he'll return in some form, won't he?
So Paul, what happened? It was you saw a man being happy, and you thought, I'll vanquish that as quickly as I possibly can. Is that right?
I just don't want people to believe that the Baker, Baker being the saviour has gone. Until that man retires, Baker will be linked with Coventry. And I mean, in April, March, he might move to the Chinese Super League, or the Portuguese
child,
Super League.
Can I give you I think he has got a child on the way, yeah.
He's got a child on the way, hasn't he? Because I haven't had it yet.
Can I hit you with a big prediction? I think there is a sort of transfer window for the last point at which you can sign free agents, around about that point. And I'm giving you a free agent deadline day double signing of Carl Baker and Gary McSheffrey. Early season call. It may happen, it may not. Look, I'm putting it out there. I'm going for it. I'm going for moment of the week. Lee Burge's performance.
Very nice.
To try and I thought he played really well. I think there's still this. He doesn't distribute the ball as well as Reece Charles Cook, obviously, because it's not what he does. But I thought, given O'Brien's two pretty sizable mistakes in recent weeks, I thought it was nice to see Lee Burge come back and do what I think he does best, which is make some very good saves occasionally and just look like a solid first choice keeper. I really like him. I still don't really understand the one from the top right hand corner.
Talking about sort of kind angles, the behind the goal angle of that save is the one. How he got his hand to that was incredible. You didn't quite appreciate it from the other angle, but behind the goal, it was just good on him. Again,
we were in a perfect position to see that, and it was every step of the way you were like, that is going right in the top corner. As soon as he hit it, you were like, that is a really good free kick. And then when he pulled it out comfortably in the end. It weren't fingertips, was it? He got a full palm on it and pushed it right round. But I thought he did everything okay. I still don't really think his distribution is you would think the way that people talk about his distribution that he was Jordan Willis. But it's not anywhere near as sort of pronounced as that. Sorry, that was unnecessarily cruel on Jordan Willis. I couldn't resist. Neil, we've already started to get into it. What did you think was the most noticeable thing from the Chesterfield performance?
I think it was. It's funny because there's kind of the at the time judgment, and then again the one after a few days after you've calmed down, you've begun to assess it. So at the time, after I watched the match, it was just an odd sense of sort of boredom with the attack and the inevitability of not being able to get that goal. And I think that's kind of what struck me more than anything. Sort of that starting lineup. The more I start to see the de facto or default Doyle, Kelly, Jones, Bevan, Vincenti, McNulty lineup, there's only one player within that who I feel alone can do a decent sort of job for us in creating, and that's Jody Jones. And there was just an element of sort of about watching that attacking unit, which is that's pretty much what I took from the game. I just wanted something different. I wanted Robins to start with something different because I feel like we've come to a point where that's almost too safe. That attacking six is just, you've got Bevan, who, I say it all the time, but there's one player by himself. When I watch him, and if I wasn't watching anything else around him, I'd say, okay, he looks all right, even though he didn't play particularly well at the weekend. But then just in that system, the players around him, they don't complement him in sort of any sense, and it just frustrated me. So as I moved and watched the game back a few days later and just kind of tried to review it a bit more, it was more frustration that we seem to have these more sort of free attacking options, and we didn't use them. So what we ended up with was quite a performance which wasn't as kind of as incisive as it probably should have been. We should have scored a goal or two in that match, I'm pretty sure. I mean, we got some chances. There were only a couple, I'd say, real sort of well-created chances. I think McNulty's header was the one where he should have scored. The rest were sort of either long shots or offside Vincenti, or McNulty created a nice chance for himself as well. But I don't know, it's just 2 games in a row where you're playing against 10 men for a large chunk of the game and not really having the wherewithal to put the ball in the back of the net wasn't great, really.
Can we talk the Vincenti offside goal? Now, I've seen it back, but again, you can't really tell from the angle that it's shot at. But you can tell from his reaction that he knows he's offside. He's clearly offside. How is he offside? Because I don't know if you notice it. What I thought was interesting, actually, was when he got on the end of it, I was really confused because he'd picked the ball up about 40 yards away from goal in the centre a few seconds before, and I was like, I've seen you play. You're not quick enough to have got into the box in that position so quick. But it was such an astute position to pick up. Yeah. I thought that in itself was something that I wondered, he started in the middle there, and you thought maybe this is just where you want to be. This is where you're used to playing, and that's why you don't look great so far. But even given that, how on earth did he end up offside there?
It's a difficult one. And I think the annoyance there is that once he's offside,
he was like,
I knew it, away completely freely. When he's had maybe in the last couple of games 5 similar headers and he's just made an absolute pig's ear of all of them. And then the one time he puts it away nicely. I mean, I guess there's, like you say, he knew he was offside. Maybe that freed him up a little bit in his mind to kind of drop it into the net. But bloody hell!
But how badly offside must you know you are that once you've scored it, you don't even try and wheel away to, if the linesman's got any doubt in his mind, to try and set it one way or the other. Just straight away, he's headed it in, and it was just like, I'm not even going to bother trying to get away with that. It's just, I was clearly, I was well off because I didn't even think about it at all. You're like, oh, come on, man, this is...
It's his current philosophical bent. Everything's going wrong for that man, so he's,
I've only got one thing to add about that. Well, I went to a museum in Manchester today, and there was a kid with a Rochdale shirt with Vincenzi on the back.
Oh, really?
Wow.
That was the only thing I had to watch. I mean, I'm sort of also with Neil. I only watched the highlights because life's too short to watch any of that shit back again. But one thing I was interested by was, me and Yoey discussed this sort of pre-pod, is I've heard all this, we missed lots of chances. I can only really remember 2 chances, ignoring the offside header, that were inside the penalty area. Like, the Jody Jones one is basically just a cross that no one touches, that the keeper then sort of flaps out a bit. And then there's a McNulty shot from outside the area. We're still not, considering we're playing against 10 men, and not any old 10 men, bottom of the table, started really badly, a bit shit, Chesterfield, who I think only won 2 in the last 18 games in the last season. Sort of 10 men. They're a team who are fragile, who we should be able to, or you think with sort of promotion aspirations, we should be putting them away. But also the thing, I was out all day Saturday. I didn't pay any attention until I got home. One thing I did find interesting was just having read your 2 correspondents, was apparently how dull the rest of the first 60 minutes were. I mean, were they as bad as in comparison to some of the boring football we've watched over the years? How boring was it?
Oh, it's context, isn't it? I'm sure it wasn't that boring. It made for a nice highlights package, like you say, because there were these shots which were actually making the keeper save, and I think McNulty hit the bar. Was it a save or a bar? I can't quite remember. But it was.
I think it's off the bar. Yeah.
it wasn't quite as boring as you make out. I mean, there have been games where we've literally had no attempts at goal, and there's just been a complete impotence in the entire attacking line. I thought Jody Jones had another good game. He's a threatening player, and there are elements of excitement. It's just I'm going to have to say cutting edge here, but that's a little bit too simplistic. But there is that sort of lack of sort of incisiveness in front, and then you've got players who I feel could help us. So you've got Andrew and Nazon in the centre. I think they could be a real benefit to us, and we're not utilising them. At least we haven't done so in the way I would have wanted to so far.
Would you make Sweet? I mean, he did start with Leduc and Newtoni against Yeovil, and then obviously went back to what we can only presume is his preferred option of Bevan, Vincenzi, McNulty and Jones for the game on Saturday. Do you expect him to... I mean, we talk about this a lot, obviously, and we talked about it a lot on the Mowbray of giving players games. Is it worth any reason worth persevering with what appears to be his favoured lineup, or do you think he just needs to... Are we at that point now where we just need probably Bevan to get a sort of a little bit of an injury, so he can't, he has to be dropped for a couple of games?
What are you planning?
No, I'm not planning. I'm not Nancy Corrigan or whatever her name was. I'm not going to go with a crowbar and take him out. But we've seen this over the years where, certain players, once they get injured, their replacement, who the fans seem to think are better, come in and sometimes prove the fans right. And I'm just wondering now if a nice little injury to Bevan might give Tony 5 games in the team, and by the end of those 5 games, he has to play every game.
Yeah,
I'm not so sure it's the replacement side of things, though, is it? I think it's more because if you put Tony in up front with McNulty, I still don't think that is an attacking unit that's potentially going to be that good. I think it's more that Robin seems very wedded to a formation, and his only real adjustment at the moment is trying to shoehorn other players into this formation. Sorry, I've got crowbar on the mind. So it's just like if you take out one and then you put Tony Andrew up front alongside McNulty, I don't feel like that's much of an adjustment really, because I don't think you're going to get the best out of Andrew. So I just think there are concerns in my mind, kind of within that entire unit. He's kind of committed to this central partnership of Doyle and Kelly, and then once you do that, you're hamstring really in terms of who you pick around him. You need someone on the left, so you got Jody Jones, and then suddenly, I need someone on the right. I don't think we've got anybody for the right, and the nearest fit you've got is Nazon, I'd say, and I don't want him playing on the right. So it's kind of it's more than just flicking around players within the same formation. I think there's probably a bit of creativity to be had in the middle as well as sort of the whole unit. The biggest issue he's got is obviously he's committed to this formation and trained on it all summer long. It's always a big call to completely change it on the whim, of 5 games. I mean, there's nothing to say that it won't turn around. It's just, from us as fans watching it, there seems to be kind of some quite prevalent issues with the unit that we've got there at the moment.
Do you see it? I mean, the thing is, do you see it clicking? Do you see that suddenly working? Because I've seen a couple of people go, put things in perspective, we don't concede goals. And it's like, we're in League 2 playing with 6 defensive players. I'd like to think we're not going to concede many goals in League 2 playing with 6 defensive players, because I'd like to think that in League 2 there aren't that many teams who are going to break down a really solid unit. I mean, for me, one of the issues isn't the fact you play 2 defensive midfielders. It's the players around them. If you play 2 defensive midfielders, but you've got absolutely flying fullbacks, then that's fine. But I don't see us... how did Grimmer play? Because he's obviously been brought in for his attacking acumen. He hasn't really set the world on fire yet. As we've discussed, Chris Stokes, we're not sure how fit he is. So you can have those 2 defence midfielders if they're sort of covering the fullbacks who are on the edge of the area. I get the feeling that our fullbacks aren't attacking either. So we are sort of we're set with 6 players, and then is Ben Stevenson really that attacking that we can't risk him with 5 defensive players around him. I mean, am I missing something? Is Ben Stevenson basically just too creative and too much of a wild card to play in the midfield too? Or am I just now overstating? Would Stevenson make that much of a difference?
I think it's more about, I think Robbins' trust in those two. He's obviously got 2 proper professional blokes in the middle of the park who he feels he can fully trust in that position. And that's not to say Stevenson's not trustworthy, because I think we've all seen the quality of the guy. He certainly is, but it's just it's a Robbins thing, and it's like we've kind of spoken about before, the fact that he gets on well with Bevan, so there's a trust in him to be able to sort of at least try to execute his plan. I mean, just to go back to your first point about what was your first point? I had a very strong point on this. About we've all watched enough sort of football to know that things can turn around. Exactly the same team can somehow flip it around based on nothing more than maybe a lucky game or something like that. So I don't think, even if we did persist with this team, that is particularly terminal, because we've seen this team can win games of football. I guess the question is, what comes first? Do we force the change and try and find a new option? Because there's always another option. There's always something that's going to fix it. Or does this team turn it around quicker? And what's the next game? Who have we got on Saturday?
Port
We've
Vale.
got second of bottom Port Vale, who've only won once, and then another team a bit like Chesterfield, who are continuing their poor form from last season.
So it's not inconceivable that on Saturday we put in another performance like the Notts County one, where we maybe get a few goals, say, always hand to us, and suddenly things look a lot better with exactly the same unit. And it's strange, because I want to change it. I want to, because I think I'd rather be more assertive in our mindset and just say, okay, well, this hasn't worked for us for the last few games. I think there's things we can do to actually start blowing teams out of the water. Throw some real, Bison, Nazon, get him on there. He can do some damage. But that's not to say that the team that they've got out there is completely, not capable of winning games.
I understand that, but I think you can also fall into the. You can pick the wrong team can win a game as well, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I agree with that, yeah.
And my concern is that we're still going on so much about the Notts County game, which was great, but as I said when I first walked out, you put Jody Jones on Notts County's team, and we lose that, because Jody Jones was the only player on the pitch who was going to make a goal happen that day. And since then, Jody Jones, by the sounds of it, has been having good games, but he isn't looking like he's going to score. I mean, the Grimsby game, as we discussed after that game as well, it's like basically that changes, or we win that game on a complete fluke, and we lose the game against Newport on a complete fluke as well. But against Newport, we never really looked like scoring that game. We either lose that 1-0 or we draw 0-0. By the looks of it, from what went on, we never looked like scoring a goal. So it's. I agree that team has won and probably might be able to win again. My concern is that I think at the moment that team is Bevan's on, I think, 15, 16 game goalless run. I mean, he doesn't look like scoring. I mean, we'll discuss McNulty in a second. McNulty, whatever we think about him, he is having chances to miss. Bevan isn't even having chances. And that's a concern. That is a major concern, because you also get the players who aren't playing going, all right, Bevan's playing, he's starting most weeks. He isn't looking like scoring a goal, but he's clearly first choice. How am I going to get a chance if, he got dropped for the Oval game and he's straight back in the week after? And you're just like, well, how much stick on is some of these players? I mean, how much more time do we give people like Bevan and McNulty when there are other options? Whether or not, as Joey said earlier, it's like clearly Burge was first choice. I understand that, but how many more chances do we give a misfiring strike force? Because on the McNulty issue, I know people sort of see something in McNulty. Last season, he only scored once for Bradford, and Bradford only played him about 10 times. Bradford didn't quite fancy him. Now, I know that's different clubs, different mentality, but maybe with McNulty, he just hasn't played a lot of games in the last couple of years. Maybe for him, he does need 10, 15 games, and once he gets that run of games and the goals start to flow, he'll feel a lot more confident. But if he's playing in a team who aren't creating many chances, is that confidence going to come?
I think what we can deduce from this is that we're still sort of rife with caveats, aren't we? We've got like a month's worth of data to work with, and there's so much we're learning. I think another 6 weeks, it will be a lot clearer in our minds, sort of the pros and cons around some of these players. Because like you say, McNulty there's something very real that you could say, oh, actually, he's maybe just not quite back at it yet. It's just so much to go on.
I'm, for what it's worth, I am warming to him. I increasingly see value to McNulty. I just think there's a couple of interesting comparisons. Interesting, if I do say so myself. I apologise. Do you remember when Lee Hughes first came to us?
I do.
I always felt that Lee Hughes when he signed, I thought that was as close as you were going to find to guaranteed goals. And that's not the point that I'm making about McNulty. But instead, he seemed to do a lot of really good work on and off the ball. But when it came to just putting the ball into the back of the net, it just never quite came off for him. Am I the only one who had that memory of Lee Hughes, or is that a fair...
No, I agree. But I also have a similar comparison. I think the Freddie Eastwood one is one in my mind where there's a lot of similarities in terms of...
Really much so, yeah.
The bits he does with the ball, you say, oh yeah, I can see you've got a nice first touch, and it's just lacking that final portion, that striker portion, where you think if you could add those goals, suddenly you become the dream striker that we've been looking for.
Do you remember we talked about last week the chance that he had that he controlled on the side of his foot and sent the player about 10 yards away, and then and he just snatched at it. He not only did the exact same thing in the first half again on Saturday, but the first chance that he creates for himself, that I think he has... My main contention in terms of a complaint is I feel like with the header and with the chance that he fashions for himself where he comes in off the left, I think, especially the one that he makes for himself, it's his work to get him into that position that it becomes a chance. And you are right, it's really Eastwood-esque. I think his first touch is really smart, but the problem is, I just want him to get it on target. If he gets it on target, I don't give a monkeys, because I just think if it's too close to the keeper, I never mind. Who is it that always said about I used to just aim for the keeper's legs? Might have been Andy Cole or someone.
It was someone like that. I was just thinking, was it not Henry? Because he used to put. Or was it Henry? I'm not sure.
Henry always used to bend it in the corner, didn't he?
Bend it right. He would have put that one in.
Classic Henry goal, but was it? But I just think a player
yeah, that's a bit unfair though. World-class striker would have put. Oh, sorry, go on, Joey.
No, I just think that I never mind a striker missing chances as long as they're on target. And I just felt with the header and the chance that he had, they were so wide that I just thought, this doesn't look right. In terms of a good thing is the other comparison, and I always joke about this, but I mean it seriously on this point, is he reminded me a little bit of Cody McDonald on Saturday. I thought he was really tenacious in driving down players that were defenders on the ball, and I think he buzzed around a lot more, and he was making things happen for us by pushing up. So I think previously I'd said I'm not quite sure where he's at in terms of the type of striker he is. I'm starting to see that come to light a little bit more, but I am really worried, albeit not completely sold on saying that it's a big problem yet. I am worried that maybe his finishing just isn't quite there. We were talking on Twitter to Tom Leach, who I think is the journalist at the club, and he was saying all the things of he's scoring goals in training and it'll come, blah, 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 blah. I really hope that that's the case. I really hope that it's just a case of once George Thomas got off the mark, all of a sudden it started to get into gear, didn't it, for him last season? You hope that maybe he has a game where he gets 2 goals in a game that aren't, Nathan Clark assist and a penalty, and that he goes, all right, there we go, and kick off from there. But it's not quite clicking for him just yet. Bevan, on the other hand, very quickly before we move on from the strikers, Bevan just needs to be dropped. I just don't get it. I like him. I like him on his own, and I like him in a context of a different team. But he added no value at all on Saturday, and that could be said for a good number of games that he's played recently. And I don't think anybody is in disagreement at the minute. I think there's a problem if he's not dropping Bevan, because it's so palpable that he doesn't add to us. And in terms of what you were talking about earlier, Paul, we were talking about replacements when we were making the Lee Burge and Liam O'Brien comparison. Actually, the job that Bevan is nominally meant to be doing, I just don't believe that Andrew couldn't do a better job of it at the minute. Whether you'd say that you'd rather see Nazon up front or not, the role that Bevan is meant to be playing is surely to God Tony Andrews. That's why he's here. So I think hopefully it's only a matter of time, and that time is on Saturday, because I'm quite tired of seeing Bevan underperform. But you know,
on the very, very quick on the Bevan one. At the end of the day, the Bevan signing has been a bit of a underwhelming experience. You came in to basically replace, or as a substitute for Marvin Sordell, with a remit of trying to score us goals to keep us up. He scored 2. This season, he hasn't looked on it, really. I mean, the other thing, he is 34, so maybe he's just gone. Maybe, just it's one of those things. Maybe he will never be that player ever again. But I also agree with Neil. I don't think we get the best out of him. On the McNulty thing, what I was saying, I think the Thierry Henry thing's quite interesting. Is remember when Andy Cole played for England, and I think Glenn Oliver said he didn't rate him because he needs 7 chances. It was like a case of at Man United, you get so many chances, you're going to score shitloads. International, I don't think you're clinical. I think the other thing we've got to consider with McNulty is he's in League 2. Maybe he just is a 1 every 5 striker, and we're not creating 5-6 chances a game. We're creating 5 or 6 decent chances over 2 or 3 games. So
yeah,
he goes 2 or 3 games without scoring, and then against Port Vale he'll get a similar chance and he'll put it away. And that's if he was clinical, I know this stands by every player we've got. If he was really clinical and had taken both of those chances, then there's no way he'd be in League 2, because clinical strikers aren't, 25-year-old clinical strikers don't tend to be farting around in League 2. So it's just a case of maybe we're just going to have to accept that McNulty's one of those people who's going to be frustrating, because he's going to get in the chances, he's just going to miss a bucket load, but we're going to need to create twice as many chances for him to get the goals. And for me, the issue I've seen since the moment the season started and really hammered home on transfer deadline day is I still don't see who are going to create the chances. And me and Ian Heron had a bit of an argument, and I'm sorry, Ian, I think we were both not in the best of places on Saturday night. And he said, well, we've got 5 creative players. And he listed Dion Kelly-Evans, who's played, 1-2 league games? Ryan Haynes, who's a left-back. And you're like, well, that sort of sums up where we're at. We've got a very solid team, but are we we played, from what I understand, we played for 60 minutes against Chesterfield, who were bottom of the table, and we didn't really break them down until they had 10 men, and that is a concern. We've got 4 months of this squad now, and this squad has got to find a way of winning these games or scoring goals against these teams. So Port Vale is an interesting one, because they are someone who I would have thought would come to the Rico not to lose.
I really hope that nobody listening to this thinks I was invoking Thierry Henry for anything other than sort of how that chance looked, because it's not the case.
I didn't think so. I think, Paul, I felt like you did.
No, not at all.
No.
As I said, it was more like that led into that. It led into the whole statement about the fact that, and we were having this discussion on Twitter, is, maybe obviously McNulty, if he was a 1-in-1 chance striker, he would be banging in shitloads at, he wouldn't be here, would he? He'd have been a success at Sheffield United, or he'd have been a success at Bradford. The fact he's here is because he wasn't a success at those 2 clubs. What's quite interesting is the Sheffield United fans seem to think quite highly of him. So, he's not a dud. He's not Kevin Kyle.
No.
He is here for a reason. So I think he seems to be, like, as I said, Mark Robbins. Fair play to Mark Robbins. He has definitely put his hat on the Mark McNulty hat stand of going, I believe this guy's going to be top goal scorer, could be top goal scorer, and there's no denying, there's no discussion about who's first choice striker on Saturday, next Tuesday, or whatever. So if that's the case, then he's going to have to build play or get players around him who can get the best out of him.
Can I just check on, and you are, dare I say, a man who loves to mix a metaphor. Did you say he nearly put his hat on his train?
Oh, so close. Oh, so close.
I want to one more thing on strikers, and then I'd ask that we move it on. The other thing I would say as a cautionary tale is I remember roughly this time last season bemoaning Marvin Sordell as a player, and now we're talking about the man who's replaced him at this same point and saying, bruh, 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 bruh. Actually, when we got to January with Sordell, I think we were like, actually, you were probably quite a lot better than we thought you were. So it's entirely...
To be fair to Sordell, he was being played out of position on the left wing a bit.
Yeah, I think you mean to be fair to us there. But
yeah, to be fair to us. Sorry, yeah, to be fair to us. It wasn't until, I think when Sordell played through the middle, I think we were all of agreement there was something interesting there, even if we didn't think, we didn't know how good he was. I just think I think my problem with the longer it goes on, the more I'm just sort of beginning to think that Bevan is just it's just not meant to be. As I said, it's just I don't see goals there. There hasn't been goals there for about 3 seasons, and I understand. I understand the people I trust say that there is something with McNulty. I haven't seen it myself, but I'm not writing him off either. I just don't know. With Bevan, I just don't see it. I just think that I'm just not convinced. I just think, for me, he shouldn't be getting in the squad above Kwame Thomas, who apparently is playing really well in the under-23s and scoring goals. I'd even go Ponticelli above. I'd even go that sort of why not, fuck it, over Bevan at the moment. I just think Bevan's just so far removed from what we need.
Okay, well, that's done to death. Neil, any final thoughts on Chesterfield?
I think we should probably mention Davis, made his debut, came in. I think he looked nervous to start with. I think he made some quite odd, tame passes to start with. He settled into the match. He's a big guy. We definitely need to see more of him. And personally, I've had no issue with Hyam so far, so he would be my replacement of choice for McDonald right now. I think he's done a decent job when he's been in the team. So we'll have to see more of this Davis fella to see exactly what sort of sets him apart from the other options. But it was steady enough. I guess he'll be happy that they got themselves a clean sheet. There was nothing sort of unduly concerning about him. It's always a little bit difficult when you've got 2 central defenders making mistakes with the ball, what you tend to get with Willis, and then you obviously had Davis as well. But no, it's good to get him in. Again, Roberts is going to have to start kind of commit to this guy now he's brought him in. We paid a nominal fee for him, I think. So, I don't know what you thought about him, Joey, but he kind of did his job as best he could, really, for a first game back, or for however long he's been out for. I
kind of felt like, in the same way that the game changed on the hour, I thought it was such a walk in the park for the back four up until the very last moment where their player, and for the life of me I can't make out who it is that steams in and clears the danger. It may well have been him. It would have made sense for it to have been him, but I can't quite make it out. That it's difficult to say how well any of them played, really, because there was so little threat for them to deal with. On that subject, though, I think it might have been that lad, is it Ugwu? I'm not entirely sure, who was responsible for 2 really wonderfully profligate bits of attacking. One, which was that one, where it felt like you just think, just have a shot. Just have a shot of it. I mean, glad he didn't, obviously. But then the other one was, did you see the point where he drove laterally across the pitch and his touch was so poor that he gave it to Jody Jones with enough time for Jody Jones to sort of look witheringly at him, how bad the touch was, and then dance round him because his momentum was so outrageous. It's a really jarringly awful piece of...
I've got to look back at this. I can't remember that. That sounds brilliant.
It's awful. Is he just his touch is? It's odd anyway that he seems to be running across the width of the penalty box, but then his touch is he gives it to Jones maybe 15 yards away. Jones has got time, and he's so out of control running. Jones sort of like steps round him, and he's just like, "What the?" They weren't good, were they? To be fair, a word for Chesterfield. You can see why they were in the position they were in.
You can see why some of our fans were quite angry as well, in the sense where we're playing bottom of the league. You really want to win those games. 10 men, you can put it down to just one of those games, but bloody hell, not beating them was immediately after. I was pretty cross.
That was the only thing I wanted to drop in, and I'll try and be brief, although I never am, is the one player that really bored my piss on Saturday was Doyle. I just thought he's so... We're all Michael Doyle fans, aren't we, in one way or another? But he is, at the best of times, a one-dimensional footballer, and I felt that it was never more apparent than in the last 20 minutes or so on Saturday, where every time that Jones got the ball, he really looked dynamic and tried to make something happen. I don't think he played amazingly well, but that something was always going on. Doyle, every time he got the ball, one, he was far too far away from goal. To be playing a team as awful as they were, and at 0-0 towards the latter stages of the game, when they'd camped out in their own half with no real endeavour to get forward, he just sat so deep. And you just thought, I know this is what you do, but you must be able to read this game and think, and it needs something different. I might need to get on the edge of the area so I can get a shot away or something. He just wouldn't. And all he kept doing was just chipping the ball at the middle of the pitch to McNulty. And McNulty,
Dreadful,
God bless him, chased everything down as best as he could. But he'd have needed to have been Usain Bolt to get to a lot of them. And he did a quite a good job of trying to take some of them down. But they were just... It was really uninspired. It just looked like a player who just wasn't able to use his head at all. You just thought, here, especially when we got Nazon on, just clip it into Nazon or to Jones. Just play it simple. Just these like awful balls through the middle. He really annoyed me by the end of that game, because I just thought, you hadn't thought about this once.
But it became a real hindrance, didn't he? I thought, to our attacking players. One of those players where they see too much of the ball, and really what you want them to do is either just offload it to someone else who maybe has got a bit more creativity. But I think there was a period of about 5 minutes where he did the same thing, that sort of not looking around the corner, sort of over the top pass, and he did about 3 of these, and you just sort of think, we need to create something here, and you're not going to create with this sort of blind faith in your ability to somehow loop the ball around the defence. You're the captain, you need to set the tone, and it was weird because he was actually really poor against Shrewsbury in the week as well. So for him to play what I felt was quite poor with the ball again is disappointing, because I always felt he's kind of matured since he was last with us, and his use of the ball was better. But we got classic Michael Doyle on Saturday, didn't we?
Yeah.
But again, sorry, isn't that then down to the manager to take him off, or because when you're playing against 10 men, you sort of know you don't need both Kelly and Doyle, so you've got to take one of them off. He might have taken one of them. I haven't looked, but you just think, well. Doyle is what Doyle does, and Doyle Doyle's never going to change. So you embrace that, or you slag it off. And I think I was amazed by how much praise was heaped upon him after the first game of the season. One of my concerns is, as the season goes on, if we continue to play against teams where we're going to have a lot of possession, possession's never been his strongest point. Are people going to start getting frustrated because he just does what he did against Chesterfield? So surely that's down to the manager to sort of spot that and go, maybe we don't need Doyle at this moment in time. I'll bring in Stevenson to, the game's changed, the whole sort of way the game's going has changed. Therefore, Stevenson is the better bet for this situation. I'd definitely start Stevenson on Saturday. I would have a feeling that Port Vale are going to come to sit and not lose. So I think if you know that from day one, that you're going to have a lot of possession, for me, you have your best passer on the pitch.
I just think he's a better player than Doyle or Kelly from what admittedly, only from what I've seen of Kelly so far. There may be more to come, but I just think I'm not sure we've got many better players in the squad than Stevenson. Seems odd that you wouldn't try and work around that. But anyway. Final Chesterfield thoughts, or shall we move on to the Port Vale preview?
Well, I'm done. I think we can move on, unless you've got anything, Paul.
No.
He's always got something. Let's move on. Right, we called up Dominic again, and here's some Port Vale preview for you. Okay, Dominic, thanks for joining us again this week. Port Vale on Saturday. How do you think they're going to do this season?
Well, Port Vale are sort of in a bit of a mess at the moment, stemming from a decision last season to basically replace their entire playing squad and manager with a load of foreign players with no experience of English football. Predictably, that went up in flames last season. The manager was sacked in about December, and he was replaced by Michael Brown, who just spent the rest of the season trying to offload all the mysterious foreign players and put a team out and try and keep them in League One, which didn't happen. Although they did do fairly well to take it to the final day, and I think it was a 0-0 draw with Fleetwood, who were in the mix of automatic promotion. So that was fairly encouraging. However, over the summer, it's been another massive turnover of players, and there doesn't seem to have been much method going into that squad building. And they've started with one win out of their first 5 games. The squad looks really unbalanced. They have about 6 wingers and only about 3 central midfielders, for example. And it just looks a real pig's ear of a squad. It's hard to tell what the strengths and weaknesses of it are at the moment, and what the idea Michael Brown had into putting it together. So I think it's going to be quite a difficult season for them. They've probably got enough quality to avoid getting sucked into a relegation scrap, but you never know in these kind of situations. If sort of a negative multiplier keep on going, that can suck them into danger. We saw Leyton Orient last season actually did have a fairly strong squad until their owner ordered them to play the youth team, basically. But it's not necessarily a case of having a strong or weak squad. It's just sort of that momentum can be really impactful too.
It's going to be odd this season in League Two, I suppose, isn't it? Because I don't think Chesterfield are particularly well placed to have a tilt, albeit that I guess it's very early doors. And Port Vale as well opens the door for a lot of existing League Two teams, perhaps. You talked about the squad turnover at Port Vale. Are there any players that are there that are worth keeping an eye on?
Well, I think the most recognisable name to look out for is Tom Pope in attack, who's caused us plenty of problems in the past. He's just sort of your typical big lower league target man striker. He's really good at sort of backing into defenders, holding the ball up. He hasn't scored as many goals in recent years as he used to, but a lot of their play still goes through Tom Pope, who we got from Barry over the summer. As mentioned earlier, they have a hell of a lot of wings in their squad. And one in particular to look out for is Christian Montano, who's a really quick and exciting player. He did really well at this level for Bristol Rovers a couple of seasons ago. Ben Whitfield has caught the eye a few times. He's on loan from Bournemouth. He's a very skillful player. Harness, who's on loan from Burton Albion, is more of a quick player. I actually think he's from Coventry, which will add a bit of spice to the occasion. And also at the back they have a player called Nathan Smith, who you might have seen being raved about last season by Port Vale's chairman, who seemingly was trying to make out that he was championship quality. He was going to be playing the Premier League in 5 years, probably to increase his sale price. But having watched him, he is a really impressive defender. He's not particularly a dominant centre-back, but he's just really, really composed in the way he goes about stuff. He just seems to be in the right position at the right time all the time. And I'm quite surprised that Port Vale have been able to keep hold of him in the middle of the mess they've sort of been through over the summer.
Was Christian Montano the player at the match-fixing thing?
Yeah, it was a pretty odd situation because quite a few players got sucked into that. I think another one was Stephen Dawson, who was at Barnsley at the time. And I'm not sure, but it seemed like the claims weren't as serious as first suggested, and quite a few of them ended up getting sacked by their clubs and having to completely restart their careers. I think Montano actually ended up going to Colombia for a season or two.
Yeah, that was what I was going to say. Is I always got I can't really remember what happened, but I seem to remember there being like a big storm, and then it kind of getting brushed under the carpet that it wasn't actually as bad as it first turned out. Okay, that's an interesting sort of bit of subtext in there. So, how do you expect them to set up then? With presumably 6 wingers, just all in one side, or?
Yeah. So I suppose, given their poor form and that they have a massive squad, there's obviously going to be quite a big temptation for Michael Brown to just try something completely random. It's what you kind of get in these situations. So I imagine they will be slightly unpredictable in their setup. That being said, obviously I think Tom Pope is going to be central to their performance, and also with their wingers, the pace on the break. What we saw from Michael Brown last season was that he tended to set his team up very sort of defensively away from home, and which was a contributing factor to when we beat them at the Ricoh Arena. They only played one striker who was very isolated and gave us a pretty easy night defensively, and allowed us to grow into that game. So I think they will be pretty cautious and try and hurt us on the counter-attack.
And I then ask you for a prediction, which is something that I feel like we might just eventually drop, but let's keep going with it for the time being. What would you expect on Saturday?
Well, first things first. The funny thing is that I'm actually top of like the Super Six league for predicting results. So it's obviously just Coventry City have a bit of a tin air for when it comes to predicting. As for this game, I think I'm going to predict us to win this just because I think Port Vale are in more of a mess than we are, and hopefully we'll be able to build our confidence. I don't think it's going to be a particularly classic game given the form of both sides, but I'm going to err on the side of us, and I think we'll win, unfortunately.
Well, let's hope so at least. All right, well, cheers again for coming on, and I'll speak to you next week.
Okay, bye.
Cheers. Okay, thanks, Dominic. Okay, right, any final thoughts, plugs, or are we all done here? Neil, what's going on at Sky Blues blog?
What we got going on this week? Couple more contributions this week. I'll try and get out another beauty post, so pick out a nice player from the past to gush over, something like
that. Paul, taking your kids anywhere nice?
Not this weekend. I was just trying to see if there were some sort of nominally sort of half decent questions from the audience. I'm just trying to.
Oh yeah, that's what we do now,
Twitter,
isn't it?
So you can ask Neil another question.
Neil, have you seen any of the questions from listeners by any chance? In fact,
I have not.
Let's pop this one.
Help.
This one's come through literally this second from Tom Doherty on Twitter. Is it time to admit we could do with the goals of Frank Nublet?
It's Tom Doherty. He's the one who's got a lot of experience of China football, I believe. So
that's correct.
Maybe that's where that's coming from. No, Tom, we don't want him back.
Right, this is from Buzzard Beachy at Buzzard Beachy on Twitter. Kwame Thomas, why leave him in the under-23s reserve side? I know we've answered that very quickly, but would either of you introduce him on Saturday, even onto the bench?
Sorry, go on, Neil.
Oh, I don't know why he's not there. I mean, I know he's injured for a bit. Presumably, his injury's gone now. He's back to full fitness in the loosest sense of the word, isn't he?
Yeah, I think the thing is, we seem to play under-23 games on a Friday, and he seems to play in those.
Right.
So we'll see if he plays this week.
I mean, maybe that's his pre-season. I don't know, but I'd absolutely have him in. I think he's a definite first team squad player.
Paul, you said that he's been playing well in the 23s. I'm not actually sure that's true. I
thought he'd scored a couple and created a couple.
I think so I followed the game on Friday because I hadn't got a great deal else on. And it was 4-4 against Notts Forest. I mainly wanted to retweet any mention of Corey Adai, just because I thought...
Yes, that was well noted.
But I didn't get the impression that he was particularly involved in that game, in a game where pretty much everybody else was involved. For my two penneth, I like him. He would be playing in my team, but I don't... There's plenty of... It's a bit mad at the minute. I think there's lots of things we could do. To a certain extent, I would be making small changes here and there. I think I would be inclined to start off with Stevenson and Bevan. Stevenson out, in even, for either Doyle or Kelly, and then Bevan out for someone, and then go from there, rather than doing what we normally do, which is, making 6 changes and it not clicking. I think there's other changes that ultimately might be beneficial, but I think they're the two that are the most striking at the minute.
Well, Jamie Dawson, whose Twitter handle is @JamieDawson, who gets dropped, Doyle or Kelly? If you've got to drop one of them.
I would drop Kelly only because I love Michael Dawes so much.
I think it's a big call getting rid of your captain, isn't it? If you want to drop one of those two, it'll be Kelly. But I, in my own mind, would like to find a way of keeping those two in the team and maybe rejigging the system a bit. That would be my optimum, but we'll see.
Just very quickly, Frank Nouble, 5 goals in his first 4 games for Newport.
It's on fire.
Big noise. Yeah, anyway, Paul, carry on.
Artie Fufkin, why Ponticelli isn't getting a look in the first team? Which I think is always going to happen, because he scored. Did he score? He scored at least one against Notts County.
Yeah, he did.
Notts Forest, didn't he? There's always. I mean, we've known about him for a couple of years. He is banging them in the under 23s. If the first team aren't doing it, you're always going to get the clamour for the local kid. I know, Joey, you're very much on the he isn't ready yet front.
So just to be clear, and I talked to him about it again before the Chesterfield game, but Kev Monks, who has probably seen him more than anybody else, just says he's not ready yet.
That's it, isn't it?
It's as simple as that. And
it's not always transferable, is it?
Yeah, he just says that he scores an awful lot of goals. They're very different teams to the one that he plays, to the ones that are in League Two. And he said, in theory, he could come in and score a bunch of goals, but he said if he was in charge, he just doesn't think he's ready yet. It's not a criticism or anything. He's still only a baby, isn't he? And I just think I would trust someone who's seen him play an awful lot.
Ben Pilkinson wants to know, Andrea was a huge coup and we're not utilising him. Really, really disappointing. So that's not really a question, that's just a more statement of fact. But
I see you've edited these well.
Well, I'm reading through them now. I'm not going to ask you the other one because it's just about Caesar and I just can't be asked going down that route towards the end. Does Bevan have incriminating photos of Matt Robbins by Mike Smith? I think
yeah.
You know that always happens. The problem is with being managers' or Dean managers' favourites is you know Nathan Clark I pictured of Russell Slade as well. It just you know, that's just what happens. Mr. Strong 76. Mark Strong wants to know where should we have strengthened instead of the defence or as well as the defence, and what position. Are we in the position and have the points total that was expected? Which I think is a fair question. After the first 5 games, are we round about where you expected?
I actually think we're higher than what I was expecting, but then, you know, I've got a pretty bleak out view. So, Neil?
Probably not. No, I think we've probably had another win on the board if I was going with my expectations, but it's nothing really makes any sense at the moment, so it'll be all right.
What about you,
I would
Paolo?
have expected us to have one more win just because we played Yeovil, who were sort of finding their feet after getting mullered, and we played Chesterfield, who were shit, and they had 10 men. So I'll just going week by week. As I said, I expect us to win on Saturday. I'll be quite disappointed if we don't win on Saturday, which might ruin next week's pod, but or the build-up for next week's pod. By the way, if we don't win on Saturday, I'm going to be really angry in next week's pod.
We've had...
you know, second from bottom. I know we've only played 5 games, but as I said, they've lost 4. They've only won 1. They are leading in from last season when they were garbage as well. I just think we've had a very soft. We've got to win those games.
We've had a very soft. We've had a very soft start, by the way.
We have.
Yeah, we have. I know that you could look at it into. So we've played Newport, who I'd give a wee recommendation for a podcast called Not the Top 20, who I listened to, and they did a good thing pre-season about their expectations for positions this season. And they didn't credit Newport or Notts County with particularly high chances, Newport especially, and I think that is even more so than Saturday, is one that really sticks in my craw. To have lost at home against them, that really beat me up, because there wasn't even the mitigation to it. It was just rubbish. I think we will end up hitting a run of games where we need to be an awful lot better than we are now, and we just need to make sure that we've got there by that point.
Final question, which I think is a really good one from @Ewan_Rowe, which is, why do people still dislike Lee Burge because of mistakes he made 2-3 seasons ago?
Oh yeah, good question, that, man. Neil?
Football.
Bloody football
fans. You know, they're a special breed. I know a lot of people hate him for that sending off, don't they?
Yeah.
They'll always bring that up. Like, that's even anyway relevant. I don't know. I don't even quite get the obsession with his kicking. I think he slices a couple more than you'd want, maybe. But I think as a general technique, he's got quite a nice strike of the ball, if I dare say it.
I think
it's one of those. If he does a good kick, no one mentions it. If he shanks one into the stand, that's the only one that people remember from that game.
That happens too often. I tell you what, I was watching Shrewsbury the match, and the guy next to me hated Jody Jones, like proper hated Jody Jones. So he did this thing, and it happens to everybody. But he literally just focused on everything he did poorly. He would lose his mind, and then the second half, because Jody Jones played quite well, I think he just basically faced away from the pitch and just ignored it. I decided, right, I'm not going to comment on this anymore. But he made a couple more mistakes, and he was straight at it, and it got to the point where everything he'd said, I assume it was his wife with him, she was just pretty much copying what he said, so he almost brainwashed her annoyingly, and I just wanted to throttle them both and just say, just watch what's happening and treat it fairly.
It's confirmation bias that we've talked about a million times, haven't we? Sorry, Paul, go on.
I'm not going to lie, I've hated players over the years. The Jody Jones one, I just don't get. The kid's 19 and clearly got ability. Whether or not, as my mate Jimbo says, he's as thick as pig shit is a major issue. I think his football intelligence isn't really there, but that's only because we're used to, the last couple of years, players who come through they seem to have had football intelligence, if nothing else. I mean, obviously James Maddison, George Thomas, these players had the football intelligence. They just, like with George Thomas, it seems to take a while for him to get the confidence to use that intelligence wisely. I think Joe Jones is the other level where he's got lots of confidence, so he's really good on the ball, or really interesting to watch on the ball. But because he's so involved, every time he does something, it doesn't work for him, he gets that slagging off. But at the end of the day, he's 19. Again, if he was that good, he wouldn't be still here. And I think his comments were really interesting, where he basically came out the other week and basically said an open letter to all young players: it's better to go in the lower leagues and play lots of football and then come out the other end. And, by the time he's 21, he'll probably have played 100, 150 games. And then I think you can start judging him when he's sort of matured as a human being as well as a footballer.
Yeah.
But for me, I think there is definitely, out of the players we've got, he's the player who, if we're going to get out of this division, is going to have to be sort of... I think he got in Team of the Week again this week in one of the newspapers. He's going to have to be sort of Team of the Week every fucking week if we're going to get out of this division.
Let's not do the newspapers Team of the Week. This is the biggest crock of old nonsense that ever happened, isn't it? They admit themselves that it's not even... They haven't watched the game or anything. They've just been like, who was playing this weekend? I'll just take a random selection of players that have scored or done something.
While I appreciate that, but what it means is that he's getting to be in the Team of the Week and not to score and not really do anything in the game, from what I understand. It could have been really good, but you haven't really said he was. But he's obviously he has recognition already from what he's done so far this season. I think we have to accept the fact that he is... I would have thought the Port Vale fans will know something about Jody Jones before we go into that game. He's going to start to become the marked man, because he's clearly going to be the marked man for us, because he's the player that we all think is going to be the... And if he can handle that pressure, and it's not just pressure from the COV fans, it's pressure of the opposition having respect for you. If he can handle that, then I think, and he has a really good season, then I think next season, if we don't get promoted, he will go up, because that's the sort of level he's going to have to be at. Otherwise, he's just going to, he's going to plateau this season, isn't he? And if he plateaus, then we're truly fucked.
Question about Jody Jones's open letter: did he start every single word with a capital letter?
I don't know. I'm not that pedantic.
Was it written?
He seems to be.
Was it written in crayon?
There's a lot of effort goes into every single one of his tweets. I mean, I can kind of get if someone does it all lowercase, I can't be bothered with any of this autocorrect, but to go through and make sure that every single letter begins with every single word begins with a capital letter is a lot of effort for anybody, and he does it in every single tweet. Why?
If you write it on a computer and you press Shift F3, it changes your text, so every word starts with a capital letter. So maybe he's just done that.
Maybe he's actually, ironically, really advanced at typing.
It's, the old caps lock on, caps lock off, all that stuff.
Yeah. Right, let's wrap this up then, shall we? Let's get the heck out of here. Paul, thank you.
Cheers, buddy.
Neil, thank you.
You bet.
As usual, skybluesblog.co.uk or sidewayssammy.wordpress.com to find Dominic's blog, neelamptyshow.co.uk for us, and at Neil Lamptey Show on Twitter. Thanks for listening. Bye!